The new Dead by Daylight chapter teaser is here, and it's time to fully analyze it and break it down. Kings and queens, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. Yesterday was pretty hectic as Dead by Daylight put out their developer update as well as a teaser for the new chapter that's going to be coming out quite soon. They said we're going to learn more about it on Wednesday, so that's when I assume it's going to be coming out. This chapter is called Tools of Torment, and in case you haven't seen the trailer just yet, here it is. So I'm going to go ahead and try to analyze and break everything down to what I believe is true and then share that information with you guys, as well as giving you guys some theories here and there. We're going to try to be as organized as possible. So let's start off with the first thing. Is this going to be original or licensed? Well, I think this is pretty obvious that this is original. Nothing about this screams that, hey, this is licensed. And typically when something is licensed, you do see a trademark on the video as well, especially since they displayed the title and name of the chapter itself. We didn't see any trademarks or anything like that. Typically, these are quite obvious on their license as well, so considering that we haven't seen anything yet, probably means that this is original, more than likely. All right, with that out the way, let's go ahead and talk about a few other things that I may have missed in the first video because of sheer excitement, but after further inspection, it actually does present some good information. The first thing is that when the video starts off playing, and only on the YouTube version, not the Twitter version, you can actually see a name as a signature. This signature's name is Adriana Amia, or Amai, I'm not too sure. Regardless, that's a pretty interesting name to have down there. So that in itself brings forth a lot of different theories. For one, this could be the creator's name, whoever built this robot, whoever's working on these schematics, which is more than likely, as this is the person that's going to be signing it. Why else would somebody sign if they were to sign? So whoever's making these schematics or making this blueprint, they signed off on their work, and this could potentially be the next survivor that comes into the game trying to stop their creation, or maybe it's someone that got really crazy and into it and decided to work on themselves, and this is what we're seeing as a product. This is just what they're testing out on a skull before they actually move the actual product onto themselves. Another interesting theory that I've been hearing is that maybe this could be a company's name, and it could make sense as well, although I think a survivor or maybe the future killer makes a lot of sense. And the final thing that I heard is that the initials, if you take a look, are actually AI, which could mean that the new killer could represent AI, which in itself makes a lot of sense with all the technology that we're seeing. If that is the case, it'll be very similar to something like Megan, which could be quite interesting to see something like that come into the game, having an AI type of robot running around, or a robot or cyborg type of system. I think that's really likely, and that's a high probability, so we'll have to wait and see. So let's go ahead and take a look at the skull itself. We see a ton of wires that are going around, wires that are actually powering the skull up as well, which seems to me more like augmentations to somebody. At first, initially, I thought maybe this could be a trap for some of the survivors and the killer would place this trap on the survivors, but it looks too innovative to do that off the fly with all these wires coming out everywhere and then the cyborg eye kind of thing. So it doesn't really make too much sense that this would be a trap that they place on the survivors. If anything, we notice that there's a little tiny drawing next to these skulls that we don't really see in the actual creation, and maybe that's more of a trap for the survivors or a trap for the generators, but we'll talk about that in a bit. Regardless, we see a ton of different wires that are spewing out. We see this laser eye, essentially, the cyborg eye. So to me, it seems that this skull might be a temporary use and they're just using it as a way to create this invention. And then from there, they'll move it to an actual host, which could be this Adriana person or maybe a robot or something that they're creating. If this isn't something that they're going to be moving, it means that the skull itself is a prototype, and this is probably just the exoshell of what we're seeing, and eventually they'll make it look a lot more glamorous or just leave it the way it is. We'll have to wait and see, but that makes the most sense to me. Speaking about the eyes, let's talk about what power the eye can possess if this is going to be the killer. In my opinion, this seems like a cyborg eye, and if you know anything about like sci-fi stuff, you'd know that this thing could probably do everything. It could probably target survivors or see in infrared, see in night vision, things like that. The possibilities are truly endless. I think one of the major things that they could do is make it so that this person's really good at tracking. So if you wanted to hit a survivor, you would see their blood a lot red. You would see maybe things in black and white, and then everything about them sticks out. Maybe you see their footprints a little bit better. Maybe you see their scratch marks a little bit better. It just makes a lot of sense until that survivor is downed, and then eventually you switch targets. Maybe even for a set amount of time, if you charge your power up enough, you can see through walls. It would be quite interesting, and it does make a lot of sense. So maybe that's something they end up doing. Next thing on the list are the blueprints itself. And we're seeing these blueprints for the skull, which we eventually see, but there is another device, as I spoke about. Now, this device is quite interesting because we haven't seen it in the trailer itself, which leads me to believe that it's a completely separate thing that the killer or survivor might use, more than likely the killer. Now, yesterday's video, I also mentioned this bomb kind of idea, which was a little bit far-fetched, admittingly, but this could be something similar like that. What if this device is planted on generators? We know that this killer is obviously super technology and super technological advanced. Words hard, but we know that this could be something that the killer can use either to put it on a generator, or we could assume that maybe it's used to trap survivors. We can see kind of magnets on both sides. So more than likely, I think this is something that they could use on generators, or maybe even themselves to either upgrade themselves or regress generators. It just makes kind of sense to me in that way, because we haven't seen exactly what this is. At first, I thought it was a little bit like a brain, but upon further inspection, it doesn't really look like anything. It just looks like something brand new, and we're going to have to wait and see exactly what it is. But I think that's going to have to directly deal with the killer's power. Maybe this can power up the killer more. And that takes me to my next part, which is all these wires that are sticking out the back. We spoke about the ones that are powering up, but if you notice, there's a red and black wire. You typically see these red and black wires on like car batteries, anything that essentially give more power. And maybe this power needs to be fueled, and there's different ways that the killer can fuel this. Maybe every time they kick a generator, they actually fuel up their head because of the electrodes or whatever, and then that slowly charges their power. We can combine this theory with the glowing light that we're kind of seeing in the mouth of the killer itself, and maybe over time, this becomes a stagnant light and it emits a large beam or something like that. That can be a range attack, similar to the plague, but it's more so like a laser beam that's coming out, essentially. I know, very sci-fi, but everything that we're seeing about this is very cyborgy. I did mention before that we never really had a sci-fi or cyborg type of killer. I said that it would be cool if we seen something like Megan or anything futuristic, but it seems that they might be tackling this on their own original plan, which might open the door to a ton of other possibilities. So to me, that makes sense, having a beam or maybe electrodes that go around. Maybe this charges up the eye too, as we mentioned a few times, and it makes it more powerful and gives the killer some more malicious intentions. We didn't speak about the triangle that we kind of see. A lot of people were associating this with Skynet or FNAF. As I said, if it was licensed, we'd probably know. I think this is just a completely different AI or robot system. The triangle was just there to mess with us, maybe to show significance or like a little Easter egg to Skynet or FNAF itself. But I think the triangle is its own original thing for those that were wondering. Another thing that I want to focus on is the actual weapon that the killer is going to use. So there's a couple of clues that we can actually use for this. First of all is the sound itself. The sound and the caption that Dead by Daylight used, the caption being that this is cutting edge innovation, makes me think that the weapon is going to be something that deals with cutting, especially since we kind of hear a sound like that as well of a lot of metal moving. So it makes me assume that this could be a buzzsaw or maybe any type of weapon that would actually cut, just a regular saw, something that would be really high tech and advanced. We also know the name of the chapter, which is Tools. So it makes me think that maybe this killer is going to have more than one weapon or more than one ability that they can use. It wouldn't be too far-fetched, and I think that would be quite interesting, having a killer that has different, abilities in one, and one might be better than the other. We'll have to wait and see exactly what they do, but we kind of see them do this with Freddy, where he had two powers. Obviously, we couldn't use them together, but it would be quite interesting if we could use both of these powers on this new killer. Nonetheless, as I said, I would love to hear your opinions in the comments down below, and that is pretty much going to do it for me. We'll have some more videos talking about this up until the chapter release, as well as talking about all of the other patches that the developers have included in their developer update. But as always, I'm the King. I did my crown to you guys, and we'll see you in the fog.